afternoon, everyone. This month's technology of the month is automation. And, when Himali told us about that, the entire automation team, and that team consists of quite a lot of people. And we all started working on the topics that we want to discuss, we want to cover. And there was a huge list of topics, and this is more of a filtered down list of topics. Okay, and most likely, we may spill over in February, so I'm not sure. Yeah, right. Because of the sheer number of presentations that we have, and these are some of the important topics that we want to cover. So we have sessions planned, on browser automation. We have BDD, we have API testing, performance testing, and then, especially, open source tools. What are the open source tools that can be used for automation? My presentation is more of a prelude to the presentations which will follow in this month and the month after. It's more like a trailer of a movie. Okay, so picture abhi baki hai. Okay, the rest of the movie is what the sessions that you're going to attend in the coming month. Moving on, like in this session, I just want to cover basic basic about automation, which is, if you want to learn about any concept, these are the 4 questions which we must find answers for, which is what, why, how, and when. Hi. So the first question is what? What are we really automating? So any thoughts on that? What are we really trying to automate? Any answers? Quick hands. Okay. So we have, this is our typical SDLC process, right? Be it waterfall or be it agile. Any development will go through, any application development will go through these 4 stages. Put very simply, there will be a design phase, there will be development, there will be test, there will be deployment, correct? Now, which of these aspects can be automated? Can we automate design? Every application is different, so we cannot really automate design. Can I automate development? I can automate development because it's, again, producing code. I can write a very complex piece of code which will generate more code. But then what is the nature of, development? Like, do I write the same code again and again and again? Is the nature repetitive? Development is more one-time effort, right? Whereas if you take testing is a repetitive effort, right? The same test cases have to be executed again and again and again. During the development phase, we will execute the test cases. Once the development is complete, we will execute the test cases. Once the application is in maintenance, if I'm adding any feature, if I'm making any small change in the code, I need to re-execute the test cases. So the nature of testing is such that it is repetitive, and therefore automation makes sense. Same thing goes with deployment. The deployment, the nature itself is such that it is repetitive in nature. So, what are we at, in the SDLC stages, which of these stages are we really automating? Those are the test and the deployment stages which we are automating. Next comes the, so this session we are only going to discuss about test automation and not, deployment automation. In test automation also, we have categories of test cases. We have functional test cases, we have non-functional test cases. Okay, so functional test cases are the ones which are related to a functionality of an application. For example, I want to log into an application. Any feature related, those are functional test cases. Non-functional test cases are the ones which are related to, the other kind of quality aspects, which is, let's say the performance of the application, how well the application is performing to the user. Also, we have, for example, security. Okay, so the security is another aspect which is a non-functional aspect. So, broadly classifying functional test cases, non-functional test cases, those are the test cases that we can automate. And then we have the non-automatable category of test cases also, which is the user experience test cases. And I'll take us pause, and I'll quickly explain what is a user experience test case. We have developed a web application. Take a very simple web application, and we'll we'll take categories of users, okay? And we will ask, somebody to use that application. They will use that application and they'll give their feedback, right? How was the user experience? Those all of that come in user experience test cases. And if you really think about it, it cannot be automated, right? User experience is something that cannot be automated. So, again, trying to answer what are we automating? We are automating functional and non-functional test cases. Okay. Next is, again, what really are we automating? The test cases cannot exist in isolation of the application. Those test cases belong to an application. And what are the categories of application? Web application, mobile application, desktop application, or it could be a non-UI, resource. Everybody with me so far? So, so if you put all of this together, we have the type of test cases, which is functional, non-functional, and the applications which we're trying to automate. And the reason why I have, sort of used a color scheme here, which is, everything that you see in red. Red is, is in the Accion logo. And now, it's very simple. End-to-end testing for which application? Web, mobile, desktop, or non-UI? Okay. Performance testing. For which kind of application? So here comes the permutation combination. Okay, so this is, together this forms the what of the automation. Sorry. Okay. Next is why. Why are we automating really? And the answer is very, very simple. And in the what part, we kind of, answer that it is repetitive in nature. That's why we are automating. But just look at it from a different perspective, that as the number of user stories grow, so when we start development, we have maybe 5 or 10 user stories. But as the user stories grow, they become, say, 100 user stories in, say, 6 months or 8 months down the line. The number of test cases for those user stories, grow. And, so that's one thing. And what happens to the time aspect? When I start development, in the first 2 sprints, I may have, say, just 10, 15 user stories, and I may have a handful of test cases, maybe say 30, 35 test cases. So the time that I have in order to execute those test cases manually is kind of sufficient, right? But 6 months down the line, just think about it, and, you have a team, a development scrum team, which has, 4 developers and 2 manual QA, right? When you're starting development, it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to execute all the test cases in the same sprint. But 6 months down the line, will I be able to execute all the test cases manually? No, it's just, just think about it. We have, so basically what we are saying is that as the number of user stories go up and the test cases go up, the time to execute all the test cases is actually limited. Okay, so what really happens is, say 6 months down the line, I have 1,000 test cases, and a manual testing team of 2 resources may take about 2 weeks of time to execute all those test cases. And for some of you who don't come from testing background, or who of course everybody has a fair bit of idea how testing happens, but typically what a quality engineer has to do when he's executing the manual test cases, there is for every test case there is a prelude of steps that he needs to perform. There are probably maybe 10 steps that he needs to perform before he actually runs the test case. And I'll give you a classic example of that. We did recently in our project, where we had to test user roles and the privileges. Okay, so say I have 10 user roles and I have 5 different kind of privileges which are there. I need to test each and every combination of that, right? I need to log in as a particular user, as a particular user type, and then assign a privilege to myself, and then navigate through the entire website, whether I'm seeing all the features which I'm supposed to see, and I'm not seeing anything else, right? It is a time-taking process. So as the development happens, as 6 months, 8 months down the line, the number of test cases go up, and then again, maybe I have 10,000 test cases, and there's never enough time to execute all those test cases. So, so what is the answer to that? Automation is the answer to that, very, very simply. I have, if supposedly 2 manual testers take 2 weeks of time to execute 1,000 test cases, maybe if I automate them, it probably, it will take me about 3 hours to run all the test cases. It's quite possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
There could be a possibility that the same number of test cases has to be executed in multiple platforms.
True.
So that's tedious.
Correct. That's tedious. So this is our side of the story, which is the development, the delivery side of the story. That is a tedious process, and we have to be thorough. But just imagine what the client would think. Every time I add a platform, I add a browser, I need to add a resource to do the testing, right? Because see, again, every application or every product will have a release date. Correct? It has to be released by then, and the only way that I can test the application on multiple platforms, multiple browsers, n number of permutation combinations is only if I'm able to increase the number of resources. And that's, again, it's an additional cost to the client, right? So overall, it makes sense to automate something which can be automated because it is repetitive in nature. So this is the why aspect. Now, this is our core area, how to automate. Every client knows that, he has an application, he probably has a set of test cases. He may not have a set of test cases, but everybody knows that we require testing, right? So what is our specialty? Accion knows how to automate. That is our specialty. And the real landscape, the automation landscape of Accion looks something like this. It has, if you look at this, diagram that we have, you look at all the silos, they are all application categories, which is, say, we have web application, we have mobile application, desktop application, we have, performance testing of the APIs. Those are the application types. And inside that, we have the technology that we can use to test. Now, say I'm a, delivery manager, or I'm a developer, I have, I'm developing a .NET application, okay? And I need to, it's a web application, right? And I need to automate testing. What are the technologies I can use? I can use Gherkin SpecFlow, okay? So that is how we relate, okay? I have, I have APIs on which I need to do performance testing. Performance testing of API, we can probably pick load runner. So that's how we pick and choose. And not just pick and choose, we also suggest to the client that these are the options that you have, okay? And trust me, there's no option which does not have, disadvantages. Every option has a lot of advantages and few disadvantages as well. So the automation team, with experience, they've come to know, in which application, which tool is, more useful. We all have our, favorites and, stuff like that. So this is the real, automation landscape. And nobody, I don't think anybody can learn all of this, so that's why there is an automation team. We all specialize in some areas, okay? Okay, so next comes the when aspect. When do we really, automate? And here are the three, stages of testing. We have unit testing, we have end-to-end testing, and we have performance testing, which is, unit testing is done at the time of development. End-to-end testing can be done really at any time. We can start at any time, and then we have performance testing. Typically, when the application is sort of ready, stable, or the APIs are ready, that's when we do. To really answer, if supposedly you have an application in which you have not been writing unit test cases, there is no better time to start it. Just start it, then right now, okay? So start ASAP, if it's unit test cases. If it's end-to-end test cases, it can be done in, it can, ideally be done in any sprint, okay? Or rather I would say, that's not the ideal situation, but you can actually start doing end-to-end automation at any time. It can even be done after development of the application. If it's done during development of the application, ideally it should be done in the same sprint as development is happening. But sometimes that's difficult to achieve because the sprint cycle goes, bigger, and there are little, there are other constraints when it comes to, automating the UI. So we can also start automating in N+1 sprint, and I'll come to that, and I'll explain it, when I explain the process. And as I said, performance testing of APIs can be done at any time. Prerequisites, unit testing really doesn't have any prerequisite. End-to-end testing does have a prerequisite, and which is, the application should be sufficiently developed, or it should be little stable for us to automate the test, cases. And then we have, or rather not just automate the test cases, to write those test cases. The application should be sufficiently developed and stable. And for performance testing, the one biggest prerequisite is that the amount of data which is there in the database, the volume of data which is there in the database, should be high. Only then will you be able to test the performance of the application. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. Okay.
So, Anu, so this in the latest scenario, performance testing is also done in every sprint.
Yes, and I'll come to that. Yeah, okay, I'll come to that when I explain the process. So this is the sort of the when aspect, and I included this especially for for our delivery managers and for our senior member of the staff who talk to the client even during the sales cycle, and not just for them. It's for the team leads, okay, who get on a call with the client. I'm trying to explain a typical scenario, okay. Customer either already has an application, okay, or they are N months into development, okay, and they have the manual test cases. Sometimes it's well documented, sometimes it's not well documented, whatever is the story. Their first concern is, how am I going to transfer all the knowledge? Okay, so the first hurdle is to transfer all the knowledge to a manual tester, okay. You call it manual tester, you call it QA, you call it QE, SDEC, Essentially, the first thing that we require, that we need, is to understand the application end to end. What's the purpose of the application? So the client is very concerned about knowledge transfer. Once the knowledge transfer has happened, the next step is always manual testing. You cannot jump to automation. Automation is always the next step. You have to first test the application manually, or you have to at least document your test cases, in manual, or in simple English words, okay. How you execute them is a different case. You have to first at least document your test cases. So that is what comes in, that's also part of manual testing per se. And the next step is automation. And of course, the last step is maintenance and regression. So typically, the clients are more concerned about how, especially when they are setting up a new team, or they are, we are setting up a new project. The thing that they want us to handle well is the knowledge transfer. Okay, what are the different stages? What are you going to do? Will there be an induction guide? And even if we have set up a team, what if I add a new member? Okay, so how are we going to bring that person up to speed? So those are the typical concerns that they have. And typically in automation, by the time we reach manual testing and automation, they're kind of pretty comfortable with us. So this is on a broader perspective, these are the different stages in automation. Next comes the Accion advantage. This again, the first and foremost, Accion, we always try to be ready for automation. And what do I mean by being ready for automation? We are BDD practitioners, and some of you, I'm hoping all of you by now know what is BDD, which is behavior driven development. And in the sessions to come, we have a full BDD week. I'll just take a moment and I quickly explain BDD. Behavior driven development, we try to write down the behavior of the application first in simple English language, so that all the stakeholders can understand what we are trying to develop. It's not a complex use case diagram, or it's not a complex requirements specification, nothing of that sort. we write down the requirement in simple English language, which the stakeholders can read and verify that this is the application which they really want. And then we try to develop the features which are mentioned there, and then we also try to automate the testing of the application. So we are BTT practitioners, and one thing that we do is that we write down our manual test cases in Gherkin language. Okay, that is something that we have started doing now. In fact, yesterday evening we had a call with the client. It's very interesting to mention. So it's we have the client is engaging with us for the first time, and we have it's sort of a small project, like a 4-month project with a small team of 2 developers, 1 BA, and 1 quality assurance guy. Now the client doesn't need automation right now, and they have never experienced automation before. Okay, so they come from a manual testing background. Okay, so they asked us that it's a 4-month application, limited screens, makes sense to do manual testing. This it's only when you have large number of user stories, large applications, when you know that the time required to execute all those test cases, you're never going to have enough time to execute all those test cases. That's when automation makes sense. For a reasonable size application, manual testing is also fine. But we wanted to give them an experience, So what we proposed from our side was that manual testing resource has to document the test cases, right? And those test cases will also be written in plain English language. Why don't we start, writing those test cases in Gherkin itself? Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know automation, okay, UI automation, the first step to automation is to write the test cases in Gherkin or in Cucumber, okay? And only then can we write the step definitions and, the actual code for automating it. The first step is writing the test cases in Gherkin language. So, in the kickoff meeting call, we proposed to the client that we are going to write all the test cases in Gherkin language. And how is he going to benefit? Later stage, okay, maybe 1 month down the line, 2 months down the line, if they decide to automate all the test cases, okay, the first step, towards automation is already scripted, okay, it's already written. And therefore, what are we really reducing? We are reducing the overhead cost of, converting the manual test cases to Gherkin test cases. So that is, the Accion advantage is that we are always automation ready. We write our manual test cases in Gherkin language, and we can automate them whenever client is ready. Because it takes some time. The clients who have not experienced automation, the benefits of automation, they take some time. Okay, and interestingly enough, the client asked us to give a demo. In the same call, they got so excited about it. They asked us to give a demo of how we automate things. And the other advantage that we have, which I'm not going to cover in this presentation, is the continuous integration and deployment. The continuous integration is also automation. Okay, and I'll try to explain it in very, very simple way. Now, say we have 6 months into the development, we have n number of features developed, and just imagine if when the developer is checking in code, if he can get a report, a test report then and there, okay, how much all of us are going to benefit with that. Not just the developer, but even the project manager, the test engineers, and all of them. Because the moment he's checking the code, he's getting to know all the features that he's broken, all the test cases which are which are not working anymore, and what he needs to do. Right. So that is sort of continuous integration. It's continuous integration because you have developed n number of features. In this particular sprint, say you added 4 more user stories, you developed a couple of more features. The moment you check in code, the entire application has to be tested, right? And it is quite possible that you would go back to a file and you would have made some change. The developer wouldn't even have realized that he had made a change, right? Test engineer will never come to know that he made a change, into a file or a feature which was, tested earlier. So in order to reduce everybody's frustration, it makes sense to, to have a continuous integration server. Okay. And then a continuous deployment, again, it's really, what we are saying is that we have 4 features. They're deployed, customer can view it, play around with it, suggest changes. Again, we have developed another 2 features. Let's go ahead and deploy it. So those are really the Accion advantage. Okay, this is what we offer to our clients. Okay, moving on, we have, this is just a sample Gherkin test case, and everybody, in the BDD week, all the presenters are going to cover this. Very simply, it's, we have a feature and we say this is the background of the feature, and I'll explain it in very, very simple terms. You have login, okay, right? And you want to execute login with multiple test values. So you can write your scenario as in, like, given, there is a Gmail application and I want to log into that application, and then I should see the inbox. Okay, so basically this when we include this kind of a sample Gherkin test case in our kickoff meeting presentation, the client, is kind of wowed. Okay, because what he feels is that we are thinking ahead. We are not stuck at manual testing. We are thinking ahead, and everybody is moving towards automation. Nearly every client requires automation. I'll take a moment to explain the agile development process with automated testing.
I'm telling you.
Okay. So I'll take a moment to explain our agile development process with automated testing. Typically what happens is that, and I can easily explain this with this diagram. Okay. So we have 2 teams. We have Scrum Team 1 and Scrum Team 2. And I think, this is the description of the Scrum Team 1 and Scrum Team 2. Scrum Team 1 is the, the UI developers, backend developers, manual QA, okay, and then Scrum Master, Team Lead, Project Manager. Why am I calling it a manual QA? That person need not really be a manual. Let's not get a skill set, okay? That person may already know automation in n number of technologies. But then somebody has to document the test cases. So that is the manual aspect. That cannot be automated. When you're writing the test cases, somebody has to really, write all the test cases, correct? That is the manual, that's what we mean by manual test cases. So that is the development Scrum team, which is Scrum Team 1. And then we have an automation Scrum team, okay, running. The automation Scrum team consists of SDITs. Now, you see that there is an overlap here. And why are we sharing these resources? Because automation testing people need to understand the application as much as the developers need to understand the application, right? Otherwise, how will they even automate? Or, I mean, they need to understand what is it that they're trying to automate first, right? So they need to understand all the user stories. So that's why we share a Scrum Master, and then we need somebody to keep track of the progress that we're making even in automation, right? So we have like a project manager, we have a team lead. The team lead can also be somebody from the SDITs, okay? The team lead for the automation Scrum team. So those are the 2 Scrum teams that we have. And then let's say I have sprint n minus 1 and n minus 2. And then I have user stories 1, 3, 5. Now, the color kind of denotes that user story 1, 3, 5. When the development team is developing the user stories 1, 3, 5 in sprint n minus 1, the SDITs are probably writing the manual test cases. Okay, they are actually documenting the test cases. Okay, and then as we come to sprint n minus 1, the SDITs would automate user stories 1, 3, 5, and development Scrum team would move to to user story 2, 4, 6. Kind of makes sense. Yeah. And then again, sprint n, SDITs would automate the user story 2, 4, 6, which was developed in the previous sprint by the development Scrum team, and the development Scrum team would move on to user story 7, 8, 9. Okay, so right now, usually, the way, supposingly if we are building an application, we are developing an application, typically the development scrum team would, or I'm sorry, the automation scrum team would run one sprint behind the development scrum team. Now, that's not really the ideal situation, and that's, in some ways it also defeats the purpose of automation per se, right? Because what did we just discuss? We just discussed that when a developer checks in code, he should get a test report then and there, right? In this, that's never going to happen, right? Because the automation Scrum team is one sprint behind. So when the developers are working on user story 7, 8, 9, they are checking in code for user story 7, 8, 9. These people are actually, automating user stories 2, 4, 6. And what was the ideal scenario? That when I check in code, the test cases are already there, and boom, everything works well. Like my code is there, my test cases are there, test cases run against the code, and I get a report, right? That's the ideal situation, okay? But that can increase the sprint duration, possibly increase the sprint duration. There are other complexities involved, especially in case of UI. The UI have to be finalized, so that I can pick the the component name, ID, etc., for me to do the automation. And what will happen here is that the development and the development of the the application and the development of the automation test scripts will happen, okay? But when there will be some amount of time which the automation testing team will require in order to I say recalibrate their test cases, okay? They may have made some mistake in they may be calling an ID, a field name with a wrong ID or something like that. So they would require some time to clean up their code, okay? And so, I mean, in the long run, it all works very well, okay? So that's about the testing process. Yep, and that's it. Thank you so much.